In this section of our tutorial, we're going to be taking a look at the Ableton Live's MIDI devices, such as the MIDI effects and software instruments, and also the audio effects. Now I've started this from the file New Live Set, so if you want to follow along, go ahead and do that also. And to do this, we really need only a MIDI track, so I'm going to select the audio track and delete that, simply by pressing my big delete key. Now when I open up my browser, if I single click, it's going to remember my last section. So here's a little tip. Whenever you open up a browser, if you want it to be at the default location, simply double click and it resets at the same time. Okay, now I'm going to start with the MIDI instrument. I'm going to use an impulse. Now notice if we go straight from the surface level of the impulse and drag it over here and drop, we're installing an impulse, but it's empty. If we want to go inside and find a preset, we go inside the folders and find one. Then we'll get some sounds, but notice this is empty, no sound is coming out. Okay, so I'm going to undo that, and now let's double click, which is another way of installing it on this track, but I'm going to do it from a preset. And now we actually have some sounds. I'll bring down the volume a bit so we can talk over it. Okay, so this is the basic idea of a MIDI track. We have a sound being triggered by MIDI. But we can also add effects, MIDI effects, in front of this. Double clicking my device browser, going to MIDI effects, and let's find something that affects, let's say, velocity. So I'm just going to drag an empty one down and put it in front of the impulse. Now notice if I pull it down here, it doesn't really matter. It knows it belongs in front of the sound making device. So we already see the first part of our structure. MIDI effects come first, then a MIDI device for making sounds, and then later you can add audio effects on the right. So what I've done now is taken a velocity, so when I play a key, I can change that. Let's pull that back some. So now when I hit, it's being reduced, or I can beef it up some, and it gets stronger sooner. So that's a simple MIDI effect there. Let's say now I want to add an audio effect after that. I'm going to reset the browser by double clicking, audio effects open, and let's pull in a simple reverb. Again, I'm going to open it up and find a preset and pull it over and drop and play. That's nothing like I would hope, so I'm going to reset this to a different preset. Let's try Forest Floor by double clicking, and look what happens. We get a second reverb. Now what you want to do here is anytime you're inserting an audio effect or MIDI effect, there can be multiple of those, so we can no longer use the double click shortcut. Here we do have to do the hot swap. So I'm saying now I want to change a reverb preset. Let's swap it out in a quick way. So let's try Concrete Chamber. Notice the same reverb is in place. Now that's somewhat more usable. I'm going to change the balance here. I'm going to filter out some of the highs a little bit here. That's a little more usable for me. So you can see now the basic structure is always like this. MIDI effects come first. Audio making device or instrument comes in the middle. And then any audio effects must come on the tail. Now if you have an audio track, the only thing you're going to be able to add to those will be audio effects. Okay, so we need to keep the structure in mind. Hot swapping for changing the presets, if it is indeed an audio effect, scrolling over the wheel, or a MIDI effect. There can only be one audio making device or instrument at a time, so I can simply double click on the device to change it out. Okay, that's a quick look at just the overall idea of how to use these devices on a track. Next we'll take a quick look at the variety of MIDI effects that are included free with Ableton Live version 7.